Hey guys, Terry from the Cosplay here. We've got another interview going on. So we've got Fred and Ellie Designs from Florida coming in. They are premier cosplay builders. I mean, world renowned. They've got. They're looking at me and laughing at me on the screen at the moment. We'll cut to them in a second. So Elle's going to go and get another glass of wine, I think. But look, we're going to have a bit of a chit chat with them about crafting, about building, about their costumes, and and cons they go to, and people they experience, and everything like that. Now, Fred was building a orc mech at the same time as I was building the Terminator, so we were bouncing back and forward on calls and video calls, etc., and going, look what I did, and look what I did, and look what I did, and it was. It was incredible. So anyway, we're gonna cut across these guys. So here we are, and say hi, guys.
Hi guys.
Hello.
So yeah, basically what we've got is I'm just going to shrink this screen down just a little bit so we can see them all in the screen. There we go. Oh, they fit, and oh look, they're being so cute. So all right, guys. Yeah, welcome to the stream. Welcome to Be Cosplay stream, and so yeah, let's get started. Where did you guys start anyway?
That's a good question.
Where do we start? I don't. So we have reached a delicate age where we don't remember anything at all.
There's actually, I think there's actually a link crossing over between painting in miniatures to making costumes.
Oh, when we lost our eyesight. No, I remember this story.
Well,
back in the day.
I mean, for 10 years previous, before I got into cosplay, I was painting war games miniatures, predominantly Warhammer stuff for commission. That's how I made my money.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 6 or 7 years ago, I developed micro tremors in my right hand. It's not really noticeable. It doesn't interfere with painting costumes. But when you're trying to paint the face of an Imperial Guardsman that's only 3 millimeters wide, it was enough that I could no longer do it to the quality that I needed to do. So,
It was about the same time when we realized that a bunch of nerds got together in various convention centers around the country and dressed up as their favorite characters. We were like, wait, how did we miss out on that?
I mean,
why aren't we doing that?
We had a conversation about the fact that I'd always thought about going to one, and we were looking for something else to get into together, because Elle was originally a miniature painter. That's how we found each other across the pond. She was sad and depressed, confusing male gamers in a war game shop because they had lumps.
I was divorced and I had boobs.
It was all very confusing for most of the NID players. And I was painting, and it turned out that the guy that owned her local gaming store was one of my customers. So I was painting an army for him.
So, and he was absolutely sick of me coming in there and distracting people. So he's like, oh my God, I'm going to need you to find a hobby that is not GW. Here's a guy you can talk to. And I'm like, yeah, I don't need any guys. Oh, he's in England. I'm like, oh, wait a minute.
So
English guys are cute.
And he's also thousands of miles away. He's therefore not dangerous.
Can't cause any trouble. So we got married. I brought him into this country, bought him fair and square. But it was about 7 years ago when we realized that there were these really, really cool cons that we could go to, and all we had to do was dress up. I was a seamstress for 25 years. Making costumes was my jam, so it just made sense that we'd start doing that. And then we realized, hold on, so you have painting skills, I have sewing skills. Let's win a contest. And that's where we are now.
So what was the first costume that you actually did?
Okay, the first awful one that I produced was like a steampunk captain that was mainly made from clothing that had been bought or
like salvage stuff,
and a few bits of like some actual steampunk toys that I completely repainted because they were just like single colors and had no depth or highlights.
And it was such a terrible costume that it got him on the front cover of the CNN website that week.
That was just luck rather than the costume. But Elle did some like really cool sort of like steampunk almost like saloon girl type
Yeah,
look,
so I
wasn't
mean,
it?
there's a lot of crossover with steampunk and the whole like Wild West look. So I made like the bustle skirt and a jacket, and we went to Dragon Con
We did.
for the first time, and accidentally had an amazing luck getting great hotels, got into all the fun parties, and from that point we were literally hooked on doing cosplay.
But and then the
Nice.
following year, we were still very much into this. I think a lot of people find steampunk before they find anything else because it's
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of it's kind of easy to do.
And
I
you can
mean,
always find bronze buttons,
and take something and glue a little cogs to it. That
and you're good.
generally seems to be the premise for most of it.
Mhm.
But then we did Steampunk Futurama, and a bucket and a mixing bowl that I stole from the kitchen.
That I will never get back.
We use what we have to.
No, we use what's in Ellen's kitchen, and I never get it back.
It's not your kitchen; it's mine. I do most of the cooking.
No. It's her kitchen, not yours.
No, it's 100% his kitchen. He can have it. I do not want it back.
No, it's your kitchen. He just works in it.
That. He's like, don't encourage bad behavior.
That's the same as my
Talking to you
household.
later.
It's not my kitchen. It's my wife's kitchen, and I just work in it.
Yeah, so that sounds reasonable. I mean, you generally are in control of the menu,
Yeah, I think that's only fair.
only by default. Like,
It's only fair.
I don't want to eat that. Don't make that.
That's right. Anyway, so that's how we got to where we are.
Nice. All right. So, what's your current costumes? I mean, I've seen plenty of pictures and bits and pieces and etc. So it's Warhammer based by the looks of it, which is awesome.
Mhm.
So can I tell you a funny story about the whole Warhammer costumes? Because it was
Please.
3 years ago when we did our Eldar. We did a Spirit Seer and a Wraith Guard.
Mm.
And that was 4 to 5 years into us doing cosplay. Now, bear in mind, we just told you, we built our relationship around being Warhammer painters, right?
Mm-hmm.
We get into cosplay, and it takes us how long to figure out, you know what we should cosplay?
All the
Fucking
stuff.
Warhammer! Why don't we do that? So Eldar was the first thing that we did, and I had a blast doing it. It was really fun. And then this one over here got the crazy idea to build the Orc Mech, which was, can we just agree collectively as a universe? That was insane.
I'm going to argue. I mean, it was a good idea, but I am, by my nature, a be quick. I tend to just rush into things rather than really sitting down and planning them. And literally, the plan for the mech was I bought the model, worked out what scale it needed to be, and started taking measurements with a caliper and started building it. That was it. I was literally just chopping foam apart and getting to the right measurements and sticking it together, knowing full well that because it was an orc mech, bad joints
It didn't matter.
didn't matter.
I
Bits
still
that
remember
didn't quite
that.
fit didn't matter.
That was actually so much fun because I'm like, that doesn't actually connect to anything. He's like, I know, right? That's fair. It's very orky.
there were bits that were gaping that got filled with hot glue, and then I'd like run it down in lumps so it looked like bad weld lines that were holding things together.
And he would stand back and go, perfect.
And it was just fun. But the problem is that I pushed the materials further than they really could. That thing weighs nearly 200 pounds. And I can stand in it okay, and I can just about move in it. Not for long. Well, you know that from being in the Terminator, but you have more mobility in your Terminator than I do in the mech. And unfortunately, the last time I wore it, the harness inside the main body cracked and shattered. It was just under too much stress from the weight of the arms and the cannon on the roof that it literally just pulled itself apart and nearly injured me in the process.
Nearly. I'm going to, as the one who tore you out of the costume, I'm going to say that wasn't any nearly about it. But it did lead us to kind of like the next iteration was taking all the pieces from Warhammer that we love, which is the iconography, the look of it, and say, okay, now let's make something that is over the top ornate, but is still wearable and functional.
Well, it's always been one of my biggest beefs with people that that cosplay from 40k is that they effectively make copies of the miniatures. Okay, that kind of makes sense. But there's a reason there's not a lot of detail on those models. They're sculpted that big.
I know they're tiny little things.
All right, so you can only fit so much detail on there before it either just blends into itself or it just doesn't look good when you attempt to paint it.
Well, that's why I loved your Terminator, is that when you scaled it up, there was all of this hidden detail in there.
You added extra stuff that you'd want to include on a miniature, but you either don't have the ability to paint a micron wide panel line or anything else.
Well, I worked...
know about everything about the Warhammer world, that type of character would have really ornate and just so much detail.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like,
and that's. I mean, I think we talked about it when we're on our little video chats while you were making the Orc mech, and I said, I want to go on the 30-foot rule, where from 30 feet. You go, wow, that's really cool. Then you get to 20 feet and you go, oh, hang on, there's a whole nother layer of detail. Then you get to 10 feet and you're going, more.
Well, and I've actually done most of the work that needs to be done for my half for ELLE's Navigator, which is her her Navigator accessories, her body armor, her large astrolabe staff. She has a skull-topped walking stick. But same principle applies. As you get closer, you find more stuff. I mean, and most people talk about the fact that cosplays have a range, and what they mean by that is that's how close you can get to it before you start seeing mistakes or things that just don't look quite right. I'm of the opinion that you should be striving to get it to the point where you can put your nose on it and it goes out of focus and it still looks fantastic.
And you're still looking for cool stuff.
Yeah.
That's the fun part.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like it's like Luke Hill is currently doing a Tau Fire Warrior, and had him on the other day, and the detail on that he's added just because he's using Tau script. He's there's all this little fine laser etched detail everywhere because Luke's another laser person like myself, and
that's absolutely as it should be.
And it is just insane.
And what's really cool though is if you take, the Warhammer figure painter, the ones that are super, super obsessed, they like to be the ones that hide detail. Like this one over here was famous for painting all the interior of a tank and then sealing it closed. What? That's crazy. Until I found myself doing the same thing. I actually, ready? Hold on. We're going to just turn you over here real quick. So that is the Navigator that I am working on. That green dress will never be seen. There is detail on the arm. The Navis Nobilite symbol is on the arm, and you're not going to see it. It's going to be under 3 layers of clothing. Why? What's wrong with us?
The same thing that's wrong with every one of us that gets to that point where we decide that the costume...
Is nice.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it, but as you get closer, if you look at each of the wings, you'll start to see, I don't know if you can see it because of the light.
There they are.
Yep. There are actually constellations. Painted on every single wing. And they're different ones.
And that one at the front is my astrological symbol.
That's Cancer.
If I wasn't, into science, I would believe in it. It's not nonsense, but I thought it was sweet.
It's sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's that level of detail that, like Luke and myself, we believe, and several other cosplay builders out there believe that once you build it, you don't want to go back to it. You're not specifically building a costume for others to admire. You're building a costume as it's your pride and joy. It's a project from start to finish, and so
it's an homage to something you love. And as Elle said, the Inquisitor that I'm working on, I haven't started on it yet, but it's getting there. The plans are in place. I went for junky, large, and cool looking with the mech. This time I'm going for highly mobile for a suit of power armor, and incredibly finely detailed. It will be the sort of suit of power armor that an Inquisitor stomps up the aisle towards the seat of a planetary governor just before he tells him he's about to take over his planet. Where he wants to make.
Hi, I'm coming over to tell you I'm taking over your planet, and look
I
at
would
me.
not like that. No, we're going to do that.
But I mean, that's what it's all about. Is like, I guess after doing Guardsman over in Hollywood, you sort of get the whole feel of what happens if the camera comes up close. And are they going to see cut lines and join lines? Are they going to see blurred detail?
That's the difference between hero props and general props.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and I think we're at the realm now where we've moved into hero props, where instead of hero props, we've taken that one step further and made it usable hero props.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. If you go to any of the cons and you walk up to somebody who's on a TV show or in a movie where you are replicating their costume, it never ceases to amaze me how stunned they are when it's like, why is this so light? Because we're using foam. We had one, there was a particular show where their entire cast was at a convention that we went to, and we ended up giving them one of the props that we had made so that they could take it back to their prop maker and say, can we just have this one? It's so much lighter, but it still had the same look that it needed to have in the show. So it really is just taking, the magic that in so many cases others have created, especially when you're mimicking things from movies or television shows. That is someone else's genius. I spent a lot of time doing work from Black Panther, and every single day I bless Ruth Carter, the costume designer, for existing, because I was able to replicate her designs and her magic. But in a lot of ways, as us cosplayers out there, we can say, this is glorious. Here's a way to make it cheaper, faster, and lighter.
Or make it at all, because a lot of time they're not even, that prop doesn't exist. That suit doesn't exist. He's wearing a green bodysuit with ping pong balls.
Ask the anime fans. No, that exists.
Exactly. And so, we're bringing this crap to reality. So,
and we're doing it in our garages and in our spare bedrooms with garbage.
Well, we use garbage. Other people use real stuff.
Oh, look, when we're making stuff, we'll use whatever the hell we can lay our hands on.
It's like your wife's saucepans.
I haven't used the wife saucepans yet, but...
Okay.
So, but I mean, we go to such lengths to make really awesome costumes. And, I got to thinking that I've made a few costumes now, and I'm only a novice in this. I'm only a beginner. I've been doing this for 2 years now.
I know, it makes you fucking sick, doesn't it?
So this year is my year to learn how to sew, and she likes it. Lights up. It's like hello. So I'm going to be watching a lot of your so drunk streams.
No, that is not a good
let me tell you something. You will learn nothing about sewing watching us do So Drunk. You will learn about how seamstresses can get drunk very quickly on cheap wine, but I appreciate that. Thank you very, very much.
So, I mean, I've got a sewing machine. I've got an overlocker. I'm just waiting for this other sewing machine that Singer's just brought out, which is actually a cosplay sewing machine.
I've heard about that one.
Yeah, I got to play with one on last weekend, and it comes with every attachment. It comes with all the walking feet, the beading.
That is very cool.
It comes with the lot, and it's an industrial grade sewing machine, so it will actually sew leather.
So I will tell you, I was stunned when I found out that because I actually just upgraded 3 of my machines into one because it was like, all right, let's see if I can take it to the next level. And I found out something very cool is some of these machines that don't say they can do leather.
They can do leather.
So I'm learning.
Yeah. So it's all about the drive. It's all about whether or not the armatures
if it has enough power.
Are strong enough and things like that. And you're not going to break some plastic part.
Right needle and thread.
And have the right needle, have the right thread. I actually spent one of my quarantine days sitting down with the 400 needles that I had and organizing them by color and by grade. Why? That is what seamstresses do. It is not healthy.
Okay, here's my one piece of advice to you from sewing. If you're having a problem, it's probably the bobbin.
It's always the bobbin.
Oh, don't even get me started on the bobbin. I've got a sewing machine that's sitting aside that the bobbin that goes underneath the bit. it keeps getting jammed and tangled up and all sorts of things. And for the life of me, I mean,
That's like it might be the wrong bobbin.
Get with me later. We'll work you through it.
yeah, it's not necessarily the wrong bobbin. It's it seems to, like, the whole armature inside clicks across a little bit, and as soon as it does, it starts screwing up.
So it's funny. I have tremendous respect for foam smiths and for people who make armor and use materials like Worbla and foam. But can I tell you something? I think that sewing is the most underappreciated of all of the skill sets, because
I do too.
it is so easy for something to go wrong in sewing and you can't work your way out of it. So for example, that scenario that you just painted, sometimes it is as simple as your bobbin is here, your needle comes down like here, and there's this little piece that comes over here to the side. If that is off by, I'm going to go with a micron, nothing works. And that could be you breathed on it wrong. And I mean, sewing machines really have not changed in technology since the mid-1800s. They've been computerized and given electricity, but it's the same concept. Thread, up, down, bobbin, up, same thing.
Yeah, so it's the hook and loop scenario over and over. They've been doing that since the dawn of time.
Yeah, that's how we can make anything out of textiles. It's insane. It is insane. I give so much credit to people who really know their sewing skills, and there are many that are out there that are better than me, but it is darn hard work.
Yeah,
oh, look, my very first sewing job was not a pillowcase. It was a stretch pleather bodysuit.
I'll make you a darn good space pillowcase, and that's about my skill set. That's about it.
But my very, very first sewing job ever with a sewing machine was my mother gave me a sewing machine, and it was like, here, go for it. She gave me an overlocker as well because she wasn't going to use them anymore, and so I sat down and between myself and my wife, she cut the pattern out, and then I sat on the sewing machine and sewed it together. And so very, very first sewing job was her Sister of Battle bodysuit.
And, now, that can change your perception, because, like, if you do start off with a pillowcase, or if you start off with, a pair of shorts, everything gets more difficult. You actually did yourself a favor. You started here at the middle. When I did my start, it was on medieval reenactment.
Oh.
So everything that I did was, what? Everything was 10 to 15 yards of fabric. Everything that you sewed was like fabric all over your head, and you're pushing it through, and you're like burying yourself underneath it. When I made a pair of pants for the first time, I'm like, this is really easy.
It's a walk in the park. You don't have an issue. You're just like, there it is.
Yeah, there's this much fabric. It's ridiculous. So yeah, it does depend on your benchmark.
Well, yeah, and so now I'm moving into some more difficult sewing jobs, working with Yaya Han fabrics.
It's good stuff. It's cool stuff.
Yeah, it
is really, really good stuff. And so we get I'm just, there's a purple Catwoman concept art out there, and my wife just fell in love with it. So I've got the purple sort of metallic sheen Yaya Han material.
With a little hex pattern in it.
I've got the hex pattern as well, but I actually found, like, the material. It's upstairs. I should have brought it down, but it's just this beautiful purple sheen, like a.
Very familiar with it,
Mm-hmm.
mainly because we have a bolt of it in the in our bedroom.
Yep. And I've literally got meters upon meters of Yaya Han material that I've just gone, I like that. I'll just buy that. It's 40% off right now. I'm going shopping.
Oh, that is part of the problem with my sewing stash, and anybody else who is a seamstress, is you don't go shopping for a fabric, you just go shopping for fabric. And then you bring stuff home, it's like, I'll probably use 15 yards of velvet at some point. So to the point where when I put together my Navigator, I didn't actually have to buy anything new. It was already in the house. Had to do everything.
You wanted to, though.
I did.
Oh, look, I mean, I go down to the local Spotlight, which is our fabric store, and they're almost at the point where they ring me when the sale's on. It's like, hey Terry, you coming in to buy some? It's like,
well,
okay.
my people do that. I need my people to do that. Rude.
So, but every time they have a sale on, they're expecting me to walk through the door, and I mean, I've just got oodles and oodles of material. But on top of that, when my mother decided she wanted to give it all up, I didn't just get a sewing machine and an overlocker.
You inherited all of a warehouse full of fabric.
I literally had to throw away boxes of fabric and give it away because there was too much.
No. You get a bigger house.
Well, no, hang on. You got to understand that some of the material that I've got still is like 1970s, 1980s patterns, but the material is like it's all coming back into fashion, and the material is perfectly fine. It's not degraded or anything like that.
Well, this been stored properly.
I have zippers from 1965. They're perfect.
I've got a box, literally a plastic container full of zippers.
Do you know? Can I tell you a secret? I make friends with old ladies just to get their sewing stash.
I would too.
I know.
It's
I find them when they're like 80.
You know, why can't they have the same thing with foam? I mean, you know, it's like, oh yeah, I'm getting too old to do foam work now. Here, have all my foam stash.
Now is the time to make friends with old ladies.
I know.
Jeez, that's terrible.
I'm gonna go to nursing homes and be like, "Can I have your fabric?" I'm sorry.
I've got a plastic container, as in like probably what would it be in gallons? 5-gallon container that's completely full of thread.
Thread's not cheap.
All right, I don't like you anymore.
I mean, there's so much thread. It's like I've got overlocker thread. I've got all sorts of different threads everywhere. It's like just literally bolts and bolts and bolts of thread.
So I will tell you, for the longest time, because I have been a collector of craft stuff, I always say, like, there's not one aisle at Joann's that I've not tried at some point. So I've done cake decorating, I've done floral design, I've done scrapbooking, paper crafting, the whole thing. So all of it is here at some point. So I have a little bit of everything. And for the longest time, I accumulated sewing supplies. And I didn't actually do a lot of sewing for a while until we really kicked up in the cosplay again. It was the first time a year ago that I actually depleted a roll of thread. I was like, I didn't know they ended. That's so weird.
It's like, oh my God, it ends.
I just thought it was constant because I remember there was a few costumes there. I mean, we had the sewing machine going nonstop, 10 hours a day for a long time.
Spirit Seer took a lot of stuff.
Spirit Seer was the second one that I actually did applique and satin stitching on, and I used, what was it, 15/3, so 7,500 yards of white applique thread.
Yeah, I know. I heard that, and I was just like, wow. Okay.
Every time I had to go buy it, it made me a little queasy because that stuff was not cheap.
No, I've even got, believe it or not, I've even got mustard corduroy.
Do you have like an avocado green floral pattern to go with that?
I think I do.
You can send it to me. It'll be fine. I will take that.
I've got bags and bags. I mean, garbage bags full of material and leather. I mean, so much extra leather that I.
I finally started doing leather work here the other day. I was actually doing some leather carving. So that's my next foray. We'll see how it goes.
Well, I'm moving away from the carving side of things, and I use the laser to etch into the leather.
That is cool. I was trying it with my Cricut Maker because you can actually engrave onto the leather. And then open it. That looks very familiar. I think I've seen one of those before. That is super cool. That is really, really cool.
So that's what the laser does to leather. It literally takes that beautiful surface off the top and gives you a nice finish to it as well. Now, that wallet I've had in my back pocket over and over and over for the last probably 4 months. And there's no degradation on the writing or anything like that. It's awesome. It's really come together
I do love watching. Oh, is it Prince's Armory that does all the leather work? And that's his friend. I mean, he does the old-fashioned way where he actually like draws out his designs in pencil and has all those different tools with a hammer, and actually like bangs it in and like embosses it and engraves it and actually changes.
I've got so much respect for those guys. And I mean, you sitting
look up Prince Armory. It's either Prince's Armory or Prince Armory. I mean, that guy's stuff is astonishing. It's beautiful.
I mean, you know, some of the painting that you were doing recently by hand, painting the letters and things like that, No, I just get the Cricut and cut it out of vinyl and stick it on.
So I will tell you, if I can brag for a moment on my husband, he is good at a lot of things related to cosplay. Like he does great armor work, but hands down, he is the best painter I've ever seen in my life because he started
By
painting
far.
here, and it was glorious and it was beautifully done then. So when he started scaling it up, fun fact, I only convinced Fred to use an airbrush like 3 years ago. I'm pretty sure the Eldar was the first time he ever used an airbrush.
2 years ago on the Conspiracy.
And he pushed back hard. He's like, I do not need to use an airbrush. Everything I do is with brushes, and it's usually very, very small and by hand.
And I'd gotten away with it, even with the cosplay, up until that point, because a lot of the armor that I was producing was very small sections and very highly detailed, so it lent itself to brush work. And I think I'd been almost subconsciously choosing projects which I could do well with a paintbrush. And then when I got to the point where I was trying to build and paint the Wraith Guard, I was like, I can't do this with a paintbrush.
In fairness,
I can't.
No, I think that you could have done it with a paintbrush, but the time frame that we had really didn't permit it. To be able to get that shading in those large sections,
it was all the blending
needed an airbrush.
of the different greens around all the different hex patterns and all the other bits and pieces.
So I pulled out the airbrush that I had had since high school. I had had my airbrush longer than I had had Fred or my first husband, now that I think about that. And I was like, you're going to learn how to use this. And he was a grump about it. And now it is the basis for what he does. He still does that very, very intricate brush work, as you could see.
Oh, yeah.
But I will say, hands down, I think that you were one of the best painters I know.
Well, I remember somebody.
I'm good at painting.
Yeah, I remember somebody using an electric spray gun.
You saved me.
That was brilliant.
An absolute fortune, quite frankly.
That was genius.
And this all boils down to the orc when me and Terry were talking, and I think I had mentally been avoiding the subject of plasti dipping the whole thing because I sort of like roughly done a calculation of the square footage that was involved and was desperately trying to avoid having a conversation with my wife where I said, hey, I need to go and buy $250 worth of spray
we
paint.
could either pay our car payment this month or plasti dip the orc. And I was like, put a motor in the orc.
A certain somebody, your good self, said, try this. Now you initially you were doing it with brush and a rotor, weren't you?
Yeah, I originally was, but on the Terminator I ended up using a spray gun.
But I went to I originally didn't have a proper compressor, so I ended up buying one of those $35 from Amazon electric spray guns.
Yeah, the one you do your fence with. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it did the job for what I needed, and I went from having to buy hundreds of dollars of plasti dip and then hundreds of dollars of rattle can to turn it from whatever color plasti dip to yellow to, I think it was I used 1.5, so about 4 gallons of the exterior latex paint in the yellow that I wanted as a base coat. To go straight from that on something that size. I mean, I still have the terrible electric spray paint gun, even though I'll never use it
if
again.
we ever need to paint a fence.
If I ever need to paint, because now I actually have a proper compressor and one of the proper spray guns.
But look, I mean, yeah, the whole.
But it was $40.
Yeah.
I mean, including the spray gun, it was $65, I think.
So the base coat, $65 to do the base coat entirely of a 10-foot by 8-foot by 6-foot, 5-foot costume.
Yeah. On behalf of our budget, I wish to thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome anytime. Look, I mean, there's been so many people out there that have. You just mentioned rattle cans. Rattle cans are a real problem because most of that is hard paint, and so all you have to do is touch it and it cracks. Bend it slightly.
I mean, you can get away with it in light coats on top of plasti dip, but you're right. As soon as it starts to really flex, it will start to go.
Yeah,
and there ain't much you can do about it.
That's the problem. And so, when I first did my marine, I had no idea. I was like, I've got to paint this thing, And I looked up on YouTube and I was like, oh, they said, oh yeah, you have to seal it, you have to prime it, you have to and I'm like
14 coats of Mod Podge and 3
Yeah,
coats of waterline PVA glue.
yeah, and I was just like, my head was rolling around, and I'm like, what, I'm gonna paint this thing 7 times over just to finish it, plus detail, and
No.
so I was like, no. But it was only probably not even a year earlier, I painted my house. And so I went
This
and got,
seems the same.
I went and I did the house in Monument Grey. So I still had like half a can of Monument Grey sitting in the shed. I was like, so I walked outside and I got the Monument Grey and, mixed it up a bit, stirred it up, put the brush in there, brushed around on a bit of scrap foam, let it dry, and then went, bend, ooh, scrumple, ooh, poke, stab, scratch, ooh.
Well, I mean, to be brutally honest, I mean, I when you told me, I was like a little bit. I was like,
oh no, it wasn't a little bit. You were like, piss off. No way. I don't believe you.
all right,
I mean, there was
granted,
no-
I was extraordinarily skeptical. So rather than investing in a big can of paint and a sprayer, I went down and bought one of those little, like the little sample pots that they'll mix up for you, for like $3 or something ridiculous. And I diluted it enough that if I turned up the pressure on the Badger airbrush, I could force it through the airbrush. And then I just took a small piece of foam, just like you said.
And that was the last we saw of the Badger airbrush.
I put about 2 or 3 coats of it on the top, left it for 24 hours, and was then just like...
That doesn't not work.
Lick it and it's like, oh yeah, that works.
And then it was literally like, flex, bend. Jesus Christ.
Well, you know that they have to actually paint houses because houses are designed to flex as well. You know
Yeah,
that, right?
I mean, but I was just a stunt. And since that time, I mean, that orc has been thrown into the back of a U-Haul trailer. It's been driven all the way bounced around all the way up to Canada and back. It's literally had ELLE tear it apart and throw bits aside to get to me because I was passing out from heat exhaustion inside
and I also
of it.
hated it at that moment. I was very angry with it.
And the paintwork on the outside is still fine. Yep. There is nothing wrong with it. It is just as durable, if not more durable, than Plasti Dip that's been painted with acrylics.
I think it's actually more durable because it's just a singular coat. It's perfectly fine.
The only problem that I have found with it is that if I create a piece that is super detailed, it tends to sort of like lie a little thick on the top.
Oh, okay.
And can blur out some of the bits, especially where I've cut details in and built up different layers. It can fill it and blur it rather than we tend not to find with finer coats of Plasti Dip.
Well, no,
that's my only problem.
No, you can actually. There is a solution for that too.
Is that what you're talking about? Flow Aid and actually diluting it?
Yeah, you can go and get like a gallon of Flow Aid from the paint shop for next to nothing, and you mix that in with it. It dilutes it down a little bit, but the best way is to actually go to your paint supplier and get a small container of just the tint.
You can buy that?
Yep. So you just ask them, you say, look, don't worry about the paint, just give me a little container worth of the tint, and then they'll give you the tint, and you add that in after you've added the flow stuff, and it just brings it up to being a much more solid color again.
So as an aside, don't you believe that every home improvement store should have one cosplayer on staff?
Oh, definitely. So
that when you walk in and somebody says, "May I help you?"
I know more than you.
Our immediate response is, "You absolutely cannot help us." There is no way that I will be able to explain to you what I need and have it make any sense. Whereas all we'd have to do is say, "I need the cosplayer. I need that guy."
I walk into Bunnings, which is our hardware store, and massive. It's kind of like what's your really big one over there? Home Depot.
Home Depot.
Lowe's or Home Depot.
Yep, it's like Home Depot, and I go in there and immediately somebody comes over and says, "Oh, can I help you?" And I'm like, "Well, I want to do X, Y, Z," and they're like, "I'm listening." And so, I start guiding them around the aisles on where I know everything is, because I think I know where everything in that shop actually is. Everything. But look,
Yeah, we
the
definitely know
paints.
our way around the plumbing section.
So we've Luke Shrouds just asked what brand of house paint do we use? In Australia, I use Cabot's all-weather exterior decking paint because it's self-primed. It's good and thick, and that's when we were talking about the thickness of it. If you want it to be a bit thinner, you can use Dulux exterior, which is self-primed, which is a bit thinner. The Dulux will go through the spray gun quite well, and it will still maintain a lot of the detail. But if you want that really good rubbery finish, I would be going with Cabot's. Now, over in America,
Bear Premium Plus.
Bear Premium Plus. Okay, there we go. So Bear Premium Plus in whatever color you want it in. And
Ultra.
And more to
Don't
the
forget
point,
Ultra.
you don't just have to pick a color. You can go in with a picture or a piece of fabric or whatever it is, and they'll do their weird thing where they scan it, and it will create an exact copy of whatever that tint is.
Can I tell the secret that they don't want you to know? This one says customer satisfaction, no charge. So sometimes you get containers for free.
Yeah, sample pots and things like that. I often, if I'm going into to my local, I'll walk in and go, I want this color. Like I was chasing gold. I mean, gold is, oh dear God,
yeah,
it's expensive at the best of times. Now the gold that I've got, for a quarter of a gallon, so a quart, I think you call it, which is about a liter. I paid in US dollars would have been about $85 US. Why? Yeah, but when you see this gold, and I've actually got it tinted so it's more like old gold, I then added some Pearl X powder to it as well.
Oh, that's a good idea.
See,
so
whereas
I mixed a little bit of Pearl X powder in, probably about a teaspoon of Pearl X powder in with a liter of it, and wow, talk about a sparkle. Now that's
really
just
good
brushing
idea.
it on. Brushing it on gets me that beautiful finish. Imagine if I airbrush that thing.
Well, I mean, the breastplate that's currently on Elle's Navigator that I just showed you.
Yep.
That's all done with Vallejo paints. I mean, and I keep having this argument about people who use cheap, shitty paints. Okay, there are some people that can take those paints and they have the skill and the patience to layer them and blend them. Brittany Ganosa is actually a perfect example from that. She uses what I personally believe are garbage paints and creates magic with them, because I've watched her work, and she uses the fact that they don't have a lot of pigment as part of her style.
Right.
So she can create multiple layers of the same paint.
Yep.
To actually get blending effects and different thinning effects and actually blend the paints together.
Exactly. And
I use almost exclusively Vallejo paints, which come in tiny little 17 milliliter bottles.
Oh, I've got dozens of them here.
But nobody believes that that they're cost effective. Whereas if you're running them through an airbrush, you can take a normal bottle of the brush color stuff, not the airbrush paint, and each one of those with airbrush thinners turns into 12 pots of airbrush paint.
I actually think people were really surprised when we did the Eldar Wraithguard, which was 11 and a half feet tall. It was massive. How many containers of Vallejo did you use on that whole thing?
7.
Yeah, that's crazy. And that thing was massively sized.
Yeah, I used around about. I used burnt umber, the Vallejo burnt umber, for all the tinting on the Terminator to give it that sort of beautiful effect. Now it was the first time I'd ever used an airbrush too. It was scary, but and then I tinted the back end of it, so in the deep grooves with black with the airbrush, and so it really highlights the effect of it. But I think I went through 7 or 8 of the small bottles for the entire suit.
See, whereas were those the actual airbrush paints as well?
Those are the actual airbrush paints.
See, whereas if you'd have bought one brush pot of burnt umber for the same price, you could have then diluted it with airbrush thinners, and all of a sudden you've saved yourself.
I would have had so much better. So, and knowing that now, but luckily, Andy Dunn had donated these bottles to me because he just said, "Look, I've got a whole bunch," and he owns a gaming store here in Brisbane, and he just said, "Look, I'm just so impressed with this build, and I want to come out and give you a hand. Do you need any paint?" And I'm going,
awesome.
Umber.
That's fantastic.
I mean, I'm local. My local gaming store has a great collection of the game color, the most vivid pigments. They have like the brightest color, but there are also, if you're doing military stuff like Halo or any of like the military style builds, they've got an entire World War II range, which is all the German Panzer colors and all that type of stuff.
I mean, it's insane the level of colors that are out there in gaming shops.
And if you want to paint plastic props, if you want to paint 3D printed props and put a paint on there that's almost indestructible, you use their mecha range.
Okay.
Because it is designed deliberately to be painted onto like the mecha and the Robotech models that all bend and move.
Yep.
And it doesn't wear off. The stuff is almost indestructible.
Damn, that's awesome. So all right, let's cut across to we've had a bit of a look at your latest costumes and little bits and pieces of them. We've covered all of the sewing and etc. Let's go to a couple of the comments and see what we've got. So because I've actually had people going, can you read the comments? Are you actually looking at the comments?
Well, part of the problem is that me and you chat all the time anyway, so we're just talking and ignoring the unit rate.
So Oscar's come in and said he knows zero about paints and things like that, but as far as the sewing, and he saw the sewing machine and etc. And he's working on his first armor, which is an Adeptus Sororitaris Hospitaler.
Hospitaler.
There we go.
Hospitaler. Nurses,
effectively.
Yeah, a sister of nurses.
Yeah.
And which is awesome. I mean, I can't wait to see some of the pickies and bits and pieces of the build. And I try and get people to post all that sort of stuff up in 40k cosplay because it's just great to see people's progress and builds. And so what do we got here? I'm just scrolling back through the comments. We talked about Luke Hill's Fire Warrior with his detail, etc.
All that laser. And I think the one thing that literally made me go, yeah, when you showed me that one picture that you had of it, was where you've normally got like the antenna on the side of their helmet.
Yep.
There's a whole bunch of laser etching around the joint that's actually sandwiched in between the antenna and the helmet, so you won't even be able to see it, but it's there anyway, and it's perfect.
Why do we love the crap that no one can see?
It makes it right.
No, it's because we know it's there.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
It's same as
I recently did a helmet for Chapter Master Volrak over in the UK.
Yeah.
And that horrible yellow Primaris helmet. Oh, it was so yellow, it was scary. It was mech yellow. It was terrible.
I could go the rest of my life without ever seeing the color yellow.
I don't ever want to do anything yellow again, ever.
But I did the cardinal sin. I didn't paint it inside. I know, and it's like, I looked at it, because I got to thinking, and I thought, he's going to wear this often, so the last thing I want to do is paint it on the inside and have him die of, like, continuous paint fumes seeping into his brain.
Unsubscribe.
I'm sorry, but next time I'll learn better.
No, please stay logical, please. Please.
But look, I mean,
got any more comments?
What do we got here? The house paint. Yes, we've covered that. Yeah. Do we see comments? Yes, we do. What's up with the new backdrop? It's so you can't see the crap behind me and how messy my workshop is.
You need better crap behind you. I'm just saying.
Oh, look, if you could see the disaster my workshop is in right now, it is horrendous.
They're all like mine.
How is...
I know. I mean, at one point I couldn't even walk in here because there was just armor laying all over the floor and tools and crap and...
Creative chaos is what it is.
So Fred is like... Fred is like the coronavirus. You see, without even recognizing what's happening, he is moving through the house and taking over new spaces.
Well,
Like, I will go to my space and be like, why is there foam? What? Who is? I need a vaccination.
well, I actually do have a system. It's not a good system, by the way, but I have a system. I mean, my craft room is actually the second bedroom in our apartment, but I will start at the far end of the room,
Yeah,
and I work I work on the floor the same as you do, and then basically as crap is generated, I will move backwards into more free space until I hit the doorway, which is into the rest of the apartment, at which point I will actually clean up because I've run out of space.
But sometimes I come home
and I'm on this table working, and she's never pleased.
So this is my space. I did take over our dining room because we don't have friends, so we don't have anybody come over. So that worked out well for us. So my space is so organized. Like everything. I have labels on stuff, and I adhere to the labels. And sometimes I come back, and there's stuff on my spot, and I'll go through and be like, "This is your paint. This is your foam dust. Psh, get rid of it."
Oh, don't even get me started on foam dust. The amount of times I've had to clean like the whole house because winds come through my workshop and blowing it into the rest of the house.
He hates my system for my tools. They're over on a desk at the back. I have 3 large bins, and it goes tools that cut things apart, tools and things that join things together, everything else. That's it.
I've reduced that down to 2. I've got non-powered tools, powered tools.
I suppose technically I have a 4th thing because there's a space underneath the desk where the power tools live. But I've got like all my bits of PVC pipe that I use to cut circles and all that kind of stuff.
Do you know, I finally had to claim my own tools. Like, I have my own set over here in the corner because, like, hey, Fred, I need a hammer. Well, hammers are clearly in the putty things together tools. I'm like, what?
I've had the same thing from my wife. It's like, honey, I need a hammer. Okay, bottom shelf, blah, 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 this box. Where in the box? It's in the box. Well,
so,
do I have to go looking for it?
In the other box there, because they can put things apart and put things together.
So here's where I do have to admit that sometimes when I say, hey, Fred, where's the thing? And he says, it's in the takey things aparty box. And I'm like, why the is it in the take it? There is no way it's going to be, oh, look, it's there. It's there. So the system, in the most twisted way,
it works.
Does work.
It works.
Well, it's either going to be in one of those boxes, and if you think about it, you can figure out which one it is.
Or it's not.
Or it's going to be on the floor.
Yeah. And the worst thing is when you're working on the floor, it's like, where's my ruler? Where's my pen? Where's my knife?
Oh, it's buried under the phone.
Yeah, and you spend
under foam.
But you spend 10 minutes looking for the thing that you're going to use for 10 seconds.
Now, I will always be the one to admit my own failings, is that my system is so perfectly organized, yet when I am in working mode 12 times a day, where are my scissors? I will do the Macarena immediately, looking for my scissors. So I lose them all the time. So who's working out well? I don't know.
Get a tool belt.
I want one, but I want like a bandolier where you can just like
bandolier tool belts, like
yeah, we need bandoliers with giant magnets on them, so we can just clip stuff ourselves.
Yeah. That's a genius idea.
Cosplay bandoliers.
That's amazing. Done. That's what I'm doing tomorrow when I don't.
On my hip, I've got my glue gun.
That's right.
So, okay. The last thing, glue. What do you guys use?
Super glue.
I use a sewing machine because I'm not trashing.
Okay, I have a real problem with contact. I have a real problem with contact cement for 2 reasons. Top of the list is the fumes from it, even with any sort of like breathing protection, actually makes me physically ill. I have a real problem with whatever chemicals in it. My body doesn't like it.
Thinners.
And the second one is I have no goddamn patience. So the whole idea of spreading the glue on and then having to keep myself occupied for 10 or 15 minutes whilst it no, just no. I use professional grade thick super glue. I use a lot of it. And then if I'm gluing something that's like a large flat panel, I will use the Loctite professional grade spray adhesive. It doesn't make me feel as sick, and you only need to spray it onto one surface and leave it for a minute. And then what I will actually do is I will press that down and I will tack it around the edges with super glue to actually hold it in place until it's done.
Okay. Wow.
I mean, you've never had any failing with the super glue that you use. It always consistently works really, really well, and it bonds together the foam immediately. There's no weight, and it maintains. Like, it does not come apart ever.
I go onto Amazon and I order this. This is the professional grade thick stuff from Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many milliliters there are in here, but it's a lot. 237 grams.
That's a lot.
I think it works out to be equivalent to like most super glues. It's about 15 or 20 bottles of super glue. And this is only $27.
And it lasts for a long time.
And I decant it into a smaller bottle so that I've actually got more control with it rather than actually using it out of this one.
Mm. Yeah, I don't use super glue for anything except for, I suppose. Actually, I don't even use it for plastic parts anymore. I just use resin. So the same resin that my resin printer uses.
But you remember you used to say, you kept asking me, how the hell do you put this together so fast?
Super glue. Well, that's the bane of every cosplayer is, you know, that 10, 15, 20 minute wait while it tacks up so you can put it together.
I've never experienced that because this is the only glue I've ever seen in use. So when he puts the two pieces together and it's like, psh, and we're done. Psh, and we're done. And it doesn't come apart. No. So it really surprises me when people wait. I'm like,
I don't see the benefit, to be brutally honest.
Like the glue that I'm using is called Lamy-Weld. And it's made in Australia. It's an industrial grade contact cement, but it's got a tack time of around 90 seconds.
So that's not bad. I could probably live with 90 seconds, and there are certain things...
You can go anywhere between 30 and 90 seconds. So, you know, you put it on, and, you know, you put it on both sides, and then you sort of go, and about then, you stick it together.
I mean, the only time that I've wished that I had contact cement will be on the odd times when you're actually joining the ends of, like, 10mm tile pieces together.
Yes.
Where you want that good, solid tack all the way through it. Contact cement is superior for that. When I'm building stuff like all the detail on the chest plate and all that, nah, super glue.
And I have never had a piece of foam work that you've done ever fall apart. Ever.
I mean, I've watched people's costumes fall apart literally on con day, and I'm like, what did you use? Like,
glue.
Yeah. Yeah, never. I have never had a piece of foam fall apart. What I have had is foam like that we didn't expect to have the wear, like just the flexibility in it that maybe like starts crackling, but I have never had a piece fall off.
No.
Ever.
Oh, I mean, with the Lamy-Weld, the joins become stronger than the foam itself. So
right.
And flexible. They remain flexible. So that's the main thing.
That's one of the biggest differences, I think, with contact cement. I don't have a lot of experience with it. Is that the foam will flex through it. Whereas if you've got a lot of super glue in a foam joint,
rigid in that sense.
It becomes too rigid and it will snap.
Yeah.
But I think I subconsciously almost take that into consideration when I'm building stuff, so that I know that, you know, I'm not putting stuff along those stress areas that's gonna bend and crack.
Yeah.
So I do think that there is an argument for the fact that we like the tools and materials that we have the experience with.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like a safety net. So you have the safety net of super glue. I have the safety net of adhering things with thread. So it is always funny to hear Fred and I go back and forth when we have a challenge in front of us. He immediately goes to a foam-based solution. I immediately go to a textile-based solution. It's because it's what we're comfortable with.
Perfect example of that was the airbrush.
Oh yeah.
I mean, up until the age of 49, I had effectively 40 years of making model aeroplanes, model tanks, painting and modeling war games miniatures, but it was all brush. all done by brush. I mean, admittedly, I moved from enamels through to acrylics, blah, 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 blah. But my skill set and my comfort zone was with a brush. And I got to admit, I was frightened about the idea of actually using an airbrush and having to go back to being bad at something.
Well, but also, I think it just has to do with how your brain functions. Like, my solutions are all based in things that I can put together with fabric or thread. Even like recently, we were trying to talk about a bodysuit that we're working on, and my immediate thought was, okay, I'll just put together a chest piece and then I'll slip stitch it into place. And he's like, why would you do that? Why don't you just use like little foam pieces that we encase? And I'm like, because I don't think in foam. My language is not foam. My language is textile and thread.
So actually, one of the glues I've got would interest you. It's used for wetsuits.
Really?
Is
this your rubber fetish coming out again?
I've heard about this.
It's specifically it's made by the same company, and where the code for the Lamy weld is N150. This one's N145D. So it's a little thicker. Same formula and everything like that, just a little thicker, and it's used specifically for gluing wetsuits together, as in material and things like that. So it won't just do foam and rubber and things, it'll actually do material.
So, but isn't a wetsuit, like, is that a neoprene type fabric?
Yeah, yep.
So will it bond normal fabric or just the rubber stuff?
It bonds normal fabric to the point where you can't get it apart. And
so what's its cure time? What's its cure time? Same thing, about 60 to 90 seconds?
About 60 to 90 seconds.
Because E600 takes freaking forever.
I hate E600.
Or E6000 or whatever it is.
E5000,
yeah,
E-million, I don't know.
It's the current go-to for a lot of people, and it's like
garbage.
Why?
Well,
I haven't got 24 hours to lay something out and then stick something heavy on top of it.
And also for a lot of cases, it's not just like it's like, okay. And you have to wait, because a lot of the work that we do is in like sheer fabrics, and if you just put it down, it's going to adhere itself to the other side as well. And then you have a very pretty dress with a rhinestone with a piece of cardboard attached to it.
Yep. So,
yeah.
This stuff is amazing, because it's like literally, same concept, where you can either use it as a contact cement style, or you can just put a little bit thicker on one side and then press it down, leave it there, let go, and then see you later.
Can you send me a link or whatever it is when we get done with this, and I'll try and find the American equivalent.
He's gonna go get some. So it actually is kind of neat, because the entire fashion industry is getting into using neoprene as like a fashion-based design. So that'll be really interesting. So people are actually sewing neoprene into gowns. Weddy weld?
Weddy weld.
Come on.
I know they really need their naming conventions fixed.
That looks like it's straight out of Fallout.
It should be called moist and damp.
But that's a can, like, this was sent to me as a sample, because I was looking at making, obviously, my own cosplay glue, and I wanted something that was like Lamy weld, but had was a little bit more.
Look, it's Conception.
Please forgive him. He is very old and doesn't understand things. Look at this, Betty! We're on the little box, too!
We're on the little box! Give me a second. I'm just going to use a key to open this up. If I can find a key that I'm not going to have to break.
Be careful with how you search at that. I'm pretty sure it's going to take you to someplace you do not want to be.
If it's German, I'm not going there.
That's what we say, Weddy weld.
Weddy weld.
Oh my god. And the first one is a German website.
Oh my god!
No. Chemtech, Australia.
Yes, it's Chemtech, Australia. Over in Melbourne. So
try shopping.
The actual glue itself. Now I'll just get something. Ooh, it's got a strong smell to it, so you'll probably hate it.
Oh, I'll love it. You won't let me take actual drugs.
Well, no, that's the problem. It just actually makes me physically ill. The chemicals that come off of it.
So I can't quite find a brush handy. What can I use? My finger. So as you can see,
I would love for somebody to drop into this feed right now. It's like, Look at what's on my finger.
Like, what's on your finger? But I mean, you know, it's already tacking up.
Do you remember that stuff when you were a kid that you would rub between your fingers and it would make it look like you were like had smoke? That's what that looks like. Am I the only person that experienced this?
So
Did my parents give me weird stuff to play with?
It's unbelievable stuff. Like, you know, if I hold my fingers together now, they'll probably get stuck together.
I encourage you to do that. That would be fascinating.
Closest thing I seem to be able to find for it is tire in a tube repair glue.
And it would work perfectly for that too.
Same.
But it is, you know, it comes from Chemtech in Melbourne, and they've got a massive list of different glues. The guy that I spoke to is the actual chemist that makes the stuff. He also makes standard Sika contact cement, as in like the company does for, you know, all the hardware stores. And he said to me, he says, that stuff is garbage. He says, if we do it as cheap as we can on budget, it's terrible. But this stuff
I think
is
what I
very
need to do is
rubbery.
actually I think I might just want to go down to one of the local dive stores when they're open again.
Okay. Yeah.
And ask about what glue do you recommend for repairing wetsuits?
And yeah, they'll have small tubes.
See what
and bits
the
pieces.
American equivalent is.
See what the American equivalent is. But I mean, it's kind of. I heard barge is a lot of. Well, it really is a strong smell on barge, but its time is long and it takes forever to get tacky and etc.
I mean, it's a really strong glue, but and that stuff, I'm like 20 seconds of getting the lid off of that stuff. If I'm in the same room with it, I'll be heaving my guts up.
Yeah. Oh well, I mean,
Fun.
yeah. That's the biggest problem is you don't want to have to like be sick when you're making cosplay.
Why? He makes himself sick when he wears it.
Well,
as we all do.
I'm just saying.
And you've never overheated in any of the
saying.
stuff that we've worn.
I can't tell because I'm usually drunk.
No, that's true.
Yeah, let's not go to cosplay. I still remember actually being in my Space Marine having a beer.
No.
No, when you're 20 inches up, you don't want to be doing that kind of crap.
With a straw.
You worked hard at that. You went out of your way.
Oh, I enjoyed that beer, I tell you. All right, guys, look, we're going to wrap it up now, and
right.
you know, thanks very, very much for coming on to the stream. And so, guys, if you want to check out Fred and ELLE Designs on Facebook, look them up. Fantastic crew. They've got a lot of videos and pictures and bits and pieces of their costumes, and they're always willing to help out.
If anybody's ever got any questions or whatever it is, and just message us. We're more than happy to help out.
He has literally nothing to do.
Yeah, so, you know, like like the rest of us right now, we've got literally nothing to do. So, all right, guys, thanks very much for coming on the feed, and I am just going to say bye to everybody. All right, guys, thanks very much for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the interview and everything. We'll see you on the next one, and we're out.